what does domestic abuse look like? All of us have always known of domestic abuse to have been physical, and have always looked at abuse as something where you can see the signs, like it's a physical injury. The thing is, though, that abuse is so much more than that. It comes in many different forms, and it's extremely important for us to have an understanding of what these different kinds of abuse are. This will essentially help us create safer spaces to also recognize the signs if we are ever going through, or somebody else is ever going through the situation. So without going into too many details on what these are, I'm just going to briefly explain each and every single point over here. The first being physical abuse. Physical abuse generally refer to behaviors that cause body pain or physical danger to somebody's life. So this could include acts like slapping or beating or the use of weapons. This constitutes physical abuse. The other kind of abuse is verbal or emotional abuse. Verbal and emotional, actually, it could be either. These are behaviors that are deliberately aimed to degrade or destroy the self-esteem of a person. In this case, a person is often subject to name calling, to being ignored by their partner or the family member, or to have threats of violence against them. So it's very, it puts a lot of this act has an effect on a person's self-esteem. The third one is financial abuse. Financial abuse is when a person has been denied access to money by the person who's abusing them, or any of the financial resources that is owed to them. A person has the right to have certain amount of money with them, which is when it's denied, it constitutes a financial abuse. And finally, sexual abuse. Sexual abuse refers to behaviors of sexual nature that degrade or humiliate or violate a person and cause injury to them. Moving on, this brings us to really understanding what domestic abuse really is. Domestic abuse is a pattern of abusive behavior that is displayed by a person living in a domestic setup where they physically and mentally harm or threaten to harm a person within the household. So in most cases, domestic abuse is done to exercise power or control over another person. A person can face abuse from anyone. It could be from a spouse, a partner, their in-laws, or anybody in their family. It's often associated with increased isolation from the outside world, limited personal freedom, and accessibility to resources. And the risk of abuse of a survivor, of a person who's going through it, often is greatest when they are cut off from their support networks. So in the next, we are looking at who is at risk. Now, domestic abuse can affect anyone, irrespective of their identity. It's important to know that any person can experience domestic abuse, and their situation depends on who they're living with and what happens then. However, there are some vulnerable groups of people who are at a higher risk of experiencing this abuse. These could include people from the LGBTQIA+ community, women, elderly people, people with disabilities, or even children. Currently, however, the law provides relief only in situations where the aggrieved person is a woman, and women can access recourse for domestic abuse under the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005. Understanding this legal reality is a presentation that the team from Shakti will do later. So if anybody has any questions on the legalities around this, it is something we can look at later. One thing with domestic abuse is that it's important to look at these issues faced by every single one of these groups from the unique lens that they come from. So an intersectional approach to domestic abuse is extremely important to ensure that a person can be taken to safety or is remaining in a safe situation. So to understand the prevalence of this issue, it is to know that in India, 1 in 3 women experience intimate partner violence. The National Family Health Survey in 2015 had found this. So this goes to say how much of an issue domestic abuse is in India, and how it needs our importance, and why we need to have larger conversations about this. So considering the need to look at domestic violence from a more holistic approach, we at White Swan Foundation realized that only talking about one aspect of it would not be enough, which is why we've brought such an eminent panel of people to touch upon the different aspects that define the survivor's experience when it comes to domestic violence. This is including the social aspect of it, the personal struggle a person might go through, the legal aspect, and the bystander's role. All of this coming together, including the how domestic violence has an effect on a person's mental health.